Now, what did I tell you to do with that house?
See, this is the part you have to understand, is you got to be willing to do. Remember I said do the illogical?
Yeah,
well,
she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
And they deal with precedent and logic all the time.
Yeah, well, this is beyond do the illogical, because how many of you, when you go shop for something like a blouse or something, you look at the price tag first to see if you like it? Honestly, how many? Yeah. Or how about if you're shopping for real estate? You know how the books are divided into price points? And you go straight to the point where you think you should be? Yeah. Well, I used to do that too. And when I started going to Bob Proctor seminars, I quit looking at price. And so I had been looking for a place for a long time. I was living down in Malibu at the time, but I'm from the Pacific Northwest. And I was getting ready to go visit Cynthia Kersey, who had a place. She runs the Unstoppable Foundation, and we do a lot of work with them. And she has a place on Whidbey Island, Washington. And so I Googled luxury waterfront homes, Whidbey Island. And I came up, there was a whole list of things, but the third one jumped out at me. And so I clicked on the third link, and the third link in that link jumped out at me. And it was this home on Mutiny Bay, and there was a virtual tour. And I watched the virtual tour. It happened to be 10 minutes from Cynthia's too, which is pretty cool. But I'm watching the virtual tour, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I had been going to look at places for years and never saw anything that just really felt like, wow, this is what I want for my home. But I looked at this tour, and I thought, wow, this place is built for me. Like, it wasn't the kind of home that you'd want to have little kids in. I didn't have little kids. I wanted something really creative, a place where I could write books and I could study and teach and, do my work. And this place, it just, wow. I mean, I fell in love with it. And so I made an appointment to go see it. And I went and I saw it. Cynthia actually came with me. And I went and I saw it. And I mean, I just fell in love with it. But at that point, I found out what the price was. And it was nowhere near the section I should be in. And my logic was screaming, I am never going to spend that amount of money on a home. And I didn't even just say it's illogical. I said it wouldn't be prudent, because prudent felt like a better word to rationalize how I was balking at doing this. And I get a call from Bob. Did you go see the place? And I said, yeah, I went to see it. And he said, well, what did you think? I said, well, I loved it. He goes, well, are you going to get it? And I said, no. And he's like, why not? And I said, well, because I'm just not going to spend that kind of money. I found out what it costs. It's not going to happen. And he's like, do you believe what we teach? And I said, yes. He goes, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back and you go look at that place, and I want you to go into every room in the home, and I want you to just imagine that you live there. This is your home. Have conversations with people. I wanted to have my family for Christmas dinner. This was in September, and I wanted to have my family for Christmas dinner. And so he said, have conversations with them, actually see them at the dinner. And so I'm like, okay. So I made an appointment, went back the same day, and literally, I did what he said. Like in the bedroom, took my shoes off, put my feet up on the ottoman, pulled my book out, looked out at the water, and, turned the fireplace on, went and used the restroom, And I'm wandering around the house. At one point, the realtors are like following me, and they're trying to tell me things about the house. And, I'm like, excuse me, but I need to be one with the house. They're like, okay, crazy lady, we'll just leave you alone. But I'm doing what Bob said, and then I go out into the kitchen, and it opens into a great room, and there's a big fireplace, and the whole wall is just views of the water. And I'm just like, oh, I could see my family there. I have a really large family, and I could see us having Christmas dinner, and I had the conversations in my mind, and I just felt like, wow, this place was built for me. And so then Bob calls again. Did you do what I said? I'm like, yeah, I did. Well, do you love it? I said, I absolutely love it. Are you going to get it? No, and he's starting to get really annoyed with me. But I'm like, it wouldn't be prudent. That's too much money, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, okay, here's what I want you to do. And he said, now this is where it starts to get beyond illogical and kind of crazy. And he said, okay, I want you to create a really fancy Christmas decoration card. Christmas card. And I want you to email an invite to your family for Christmas dinner at your new home on Whidbey Island. I hadn't even made an offer yet. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. And he said, this is what you need to do. And I did it. And I made this invitation. I sent it to my family. Everybody RSVP'd. We'll be there. And then, but what about this new home on Whidbey Island? And I'm like, well, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, because I didn't even have an offer on it. And that's like crazy. Everything inside me was fighting that. But what happened? I'm not going to not have this house. There is no way I'm going to invite my family to Christmas dinner at my new home on Whidbey Island and not have a new home on Whidbey Island. And so I started negotiating the deal. And I struck a deal with the sellers, and I was able to do a deal where they would do seller financing. In other words, I didn't have to go to a bank, and I didn't have to come up with cash for the whole thing. I had to plunk a bunch down on closing, and then I had to pay a certain amount called a balloon payment every year for 3 years, and then it'd be paid in full. And I paid it to the seller because they kept a note on the property. And I negotiated this, and I gave myself 3 months to do it. Now, I did not have the down payment. And in fact, I told the seller up front, I said, I want you to know I don't have the down payment just sitting there. And he was like nervous. Whoa, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't sign this contract. I said, no, I will have it for closing. And so he said, well, let's hold off on actually signing the contract until you've made good progress on getting the down payment.
This is the house.
Yeah. Oh, you've got the house. This is the house. This is the property. And so, it's so pretty, isn't it? And so I said, that's fine, but in my head, I had the contract. And what I did was I would watch this virtual tour. I had it playing on my iPhone, I had it playing on my computer, and the realtors were genius. They had a picture book, a color glossy picture book with pictures of all the rooms in the property and the water view. And I'd look at that all the time. And what I was doing was assisting my imagination in feeling the experience of living there. I'd already closed, in my imagination, I'd already closed on the property. I already had the money, and believe me, buttons were being pushed inside of me. Like, how am I gonna come up with that kind of money? I mean, it was a time when I had just gone through a divorce. It was really, a challenging time. And I just allowed myself, I would skip from the worry about how to do it, and I would flip over and understand the creative process and feel it as real that it already happened. I didn't have to think about how do I get the money that's outside there. I had it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm already there, and so then I can look back and say, well, how did I get there? And I can piece it together. It's a huge flip in your mind. You don't think of the place outside of you, you think from that place. And this is what we're going to get into about being in harmony with the laws, about being part of the creative process, about understanding something that we're never taught in school, that is the real power. And it seems so simple, but when you try to do it, it's not so simple. And you have to overcome all of that resistance inside and outside of you. And I did that, and I just kept flipping the switch. Already happened. Already have the down payment. Already paid all the balloons off. Had the Christmas dinner, wonderful Christmas dinner, wonderful experience. And I'd feel so good thinking about it. And I ended up closing early. I put more down than I had to, and I prepaid every balloon every year and had it paid off in full. There's huge power, but you have to be willing to do those illogical things.
You see, I think the thing that made Sandy different and Phil different, they would do what I suggested, even though it was right out of the box. It was absolutely ridiculous to the average way of thinking. But you're not going to live an extraordinary life if you're going to operate with the average way of thinking. Most people never really make it happen big. And they're surrounded by people who do play it safe. You can't play it safe and win in a big way. See, I don't think God's designed us the way we're designed to play it safe. I don't buy that. I think we're designed to step out and really make it happen in a big way. It's like Ray said to me when he gave me that book. He said, listen, your way's not working. Why don't you try mine? Well, you know, that clicked, that made sense. My way wasn't working. His way was. Guy always had money. He was happy. He was always working on some exciting project. I wasn't any of those things. Sandy was playing everything safe. And when she went to look at that, that was the first real big move for her. And the beautiful truth is she did everything I suggested. I said, go and sit in the room. Tell the realtor to leave the house, and you're going to be there for a while. Sit in the room and mentally play with yourself. Get your mind going. Live in that room. Make believe you're just come home and you're wandering into that room. Then go to another room and another room. And take the time to sit and get real comfortable. Live there. Experience what it's like. I had Phil stand up in a seminar right here in LA. He had been nominated for an Oscar, but he hadn't won it. The odds of winning are pretty ridiculous. You have a better chance of finding a pearl in an oyster than winning an Oscar. I think you stand 3.8 times more likely to get struck by lightning than win an Oscar. The odds of winning are ridiculous. I had him stand up and give an acceptance speech in front of a whole seminar full of people. The following week, he had the Oscar. Sandy lived in the home. She had all the people come, her family. She had a beautiful invitation sent out to them when she hadn't even put a deposit on the house. She didn't know how she was going to do it. You see, if you stop and think, if you take each individual in your own situation, it's so illogical. But let's think about the people that have made it happen. How about the Wright brothers? They were bicycle mechanics in Dayton, Ohio, for goodness sake. Their dad was a bishop in a Reformed church. He told them they were going to burn in hell for suggesting they could fly. So, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of support in their immediate environment. But they got it in the air. Sandy got in the house. Phil got the Oscar. You see, I sat down in 1973 in a little room in a house on Maplewood Lane in Glenview, Illinois. And I took my pen, and I said, I'm going to build a company that operates all over the world. We operate in over 110 countries today. I had absolutely no idea how I was going to do that. I didn't have the money to do that. I didn't have the help. I was all by myself. I had nobody helping me. I was alone with a pen, a dream, and a pad. That's all I needed to start with. I didn't need anything else. I didn't need money or didn't need people. Look on page 4. We're talking about goal achievers. These are people, or there are people who always play it safe. There's no percentage in playing it safe. Yet damn near everyone you know does. It's no fun playing it safe. These people never tackle any more than they can handle without effort or risk. They invite neither triumph nor defeat. They never learn the greatness of their mental ability or the strength of their endurance. On the contrary, goal achievers are potential pathfinders, eagerly in search of a trail to blaze. Make sure your goal is big and interesting enough to really fire up your emotions. You see, the odds of you turn the house lights up a little bit. The odds of you doing this right the first time are so slim that it's almost ridiculous. It takes an enormous amount of courage to take your pen and write down you're going to do something that's right out of the box. That's not an easy thing to do. And most people won't do it. They've never done it in their whole life. I've often said, I wouldn't want to get to the end of the road. And my grandmother was like an angel of God, but when she died, she was 94, she was in a crib bed. Like they put a baby in with cribs, the side. And that is because they didn't want her to fall out. And I don't know, hurt herself. You'll see people tied into wheelchairs because they'll fall out if they don't tie them in. They're right at the end of the road. Their body it's spent. Now, grandmother's mind was sharp as a tack. I could sit and talk to her, and she would remember things she did when she was a little girl. There's a lot of people like her. There's a lot of people like the ones that are tied in the wheelchair. I want you to imagine that would be you. It's the end of the road. Your mind is as sharp as a tack, and you're reflecting over your life. You're thinking, I wonder what would happen if we had moved there. I wonder what would happen if I had to quit the job and started the business. I wonder what would happen if we had to borrow the money and bought that company. I wonder what would happen. If only I could take another run at it, get another bite at the apple. But you can't. Wouldn't it be a lot better to be like that and relive all those times? Yeah, I mean, if you lose big enough, it can be inspirational. I've lost big, yet it can inspire you. I think it would be a bitch to be at the end of the road and look back and wish, I wonder what would have happened. I don't want to be wondering I want to know what would happen and then relive it. And you know something? I think if I gave you a polygraph and really sucked the truth out of you, that's what you want too. But will you write it down then go out and do it? There's not many securities attorneys, the kinds that buy and sell banks, turn them public. I mean, these are smart people, that would do what I told Sandy to do. Most of them say, you're out of your mind. No way I'm not doing that. But she did it. Phil would phone me and he would tell me about he was telling me about a guy, he had an opportunity to shoot a movie over in Bulgaria. But the guy won't go. He won't go because there's a nuclear plant and he's not going near it. I said, Phil, see the movie being shot. Forget what he's saying. Don't listen to him. Listen to me. Build the picture. That guy not only went and shot the movie, he wanted to move there, for God's sake. I remember one of the big companies were going to sue him. They were suing him for a lot of money. I said, forget it. Don't even think about it. They're not going to sue you. They're just trying to rattle your cage. They're causing you problems. They got lawyers. That's all they got these lawyers for. I said, they're going to throw it all out. And you know something? They threw it all out. Here's the point. They would do some of these things I'm suggesting. You can ask yourself, will I do what they're going to suggest? See, it's not going to cost me anything if you do or if you don't. I'm doing what I'm suggesting. I'm doing it. Take a look in a second. The gold achievers make their own decision. Only you can decide. You see, it would have been so natural to Sandy to go to her dad. Her dad was an attorney. He was exactly the same as her, and a very good one, and he was her mentor. And she knew if she went to her dad and explained what I'm telling her to do, he'd say, honey, you don't need all that. Don't do that. The guy was so practical. Nice guy, but very practical. So she didn't go and ask her dad. You know, it's sort of nice having her and Phil here because they have both done these things the way I've lived my whole life. Like there's a side of me everybody thought was crazy. I thought myself every now and then, but only you can decide what your goal is going to be. Now you may be sitting there with your spouse and the odds are pretty good you'll say, well, what do you think, honey? Don't do that. Don't ask your spouse. When you got married, they didn't say this is an ownership. It was a relationship. We're not supposed to ask somebody else if we can do something. We're born free. God gave us the ability to choose. It takes guts to live this way. Now, if you want to play it safe and just do what the other people think, read what he says in there about opinions. He says everybody's got a flock of opinions ready to be urged upon anybody that will accept them. Yet it won't cost you anything. You can get opinions, it won't cost you anything. And that's what they're worth. See, why shouldn't we ask somebody? I'm not saying don't brainstorm with somebody, but when you follow your heart's desire, see, there's perfection within you. There is actual perfection. You're created in God's image. Perfect. There's perfection within us. There's a spark of idealism in our heart, inside of us. Yet it's that perfection that's seeking expression within through us that's causing us to want. My dear grandma that I was talking about, I mean, God bless her, she was an angel of God, but she didn't know. Yet she kept saying you should be satisfied with, well, she was wrong. You should never be satisfied with what you've got. You should be happy with it, but not satisfied. Dissatisfaction is a creative state. It's the spiritual essence of who you are wanting to open up in your consciousness. That's where wants come from. Now, when wants come from the inside, you don't have to go and ask anybody, what do you think? You know. You know. It takes courage to live this way. I had the good fortune of working with Ed Hillary. The only difference in him and anybody else I know was his size. He was a big guy. He didn't talk much, but he did talk a little bit about it. He was a beekeeper in Auckland, New Zealand. A beekeeper. Whatever possessed him to think he could go and stand on top of the world? But no one in all the history of the world had ever done that. And many that have tried have died. There's people up there encased in ice. They're never coming down. They died, and the people that go up there, they haven't got enough strength to dig them out of the ice. They're going to stay there forever. Everybody in his family thought he was out of his mind. He went in 1951, and he missed. He didn't get to the top. He failed. And they went back to Auckland. And in 52, he went back to Nepal. Now he told me, many of his family and friends got angry with him because he was going. They said, you're going to die. You got an obligation to your family, you know. But he went back, and he failed again. It was considered impossible. No one could get to the top of that mountain. No one ever had. Yet in 1953, he went back. Now, he was running into all kinds of opposition from his loved ones. But in 1953, he and Tenzing Norgay stood on top of the world. Do you know there's been over 1,000 people do it since then? But they were the first ones. I think probably Sandy's the first in her family to accomplish what she's accomplishing. I was the first in my family. You see, most people don't do what they want. Now we say only you can decide what your goal is going to be. Although another person, your spouse, your parent, employer, or associate may offer suggestions, you and only you can make the final decision. No one else can help you. There's no one in the entire world capable of setting your goal for you. If they try, and they probably will, do not permit it to happen. You will not commit yourself to someone else's goal or one you set to please someone else. You just won't do it. That's the part you love right there, this third part. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have glasses on.
Yeah, out there, right out there. You could expand your eyeballs. Now we say choose wants, not needs. There's no inspiration in needs. Absolutely none. Think of this for a moment. Your house is full of stuff that you don't need. You know why you got it? Because you wanted it. That's the only prerequisite for a goal. You got to want it. Your goal should be something you want, not something you need. There's no inspiration in needs. See, there is inspiration in wants. And if you're going after something big, you've got to be inspired. What does inspired mean? In spirit, in theos. You got to get into God. Be full of it. You've got to let that inspiration flow into your consciousness. That'll cause you to reach and stretch and go where you've never been. That'll cause you to do things you maybe never even dreamt of before. The goal does not have to be logical. In fact, you'll probably be much more inspired if it's totally illogical. That's such a tough one for most people. The road to your goal may be a rough one. Therefore, it's important for you to be very emotionally involved with the idea of reaching the goal.